table, service boards reported year-to-date riderships below budgeted levels. As indicated by the red boxes, Pace Suburban Service ridership was 6.5% unfavorable to budget, and ADA paratransit ridership was 4.1% unfavorable. Although Pace remains unfavorable to budget, August marked the fourth consecutive month of year-over-year ridership growth for suburban service, so it's a positive trend. CTA ridership is also highlighted in red, with total ridership 3.4% unfavorable to budget, with bus and rail ridership down 4.4% and 3.3% respectively from 2016. Now let's look at operating revenue. This was somewhat improved at $14.3 million, or 1.9% unfavorable to budget. The improvement was due to the positive August ridership results and strengthening ancillary revenue performance by each service board. CTA has been most heavily impacted by the reduction in reduced fare funding, while Pace Suburban Service has the largest fare revenue shortfall due to lagging ridership. Both are highlighted in red. ADA paratransit operating revenue was 7.9% unfavorable, also highlighted. This is due to lower ridership, delayed state payment of Medicaid reimbursements, and lower reimbursements for RTA certification trips. So now let's look at public funding. The public funding section of the dashboard shows the shortfall from budget of 4.4% for the region, with unfavorable results for each service board, including Pace ADA. This includes our initial projection for July sales tax, which was flat versus 2016, the third consecutive month of negligible growth. Real estate transfer tax receipts are improving, but have also been underperforming by budget thus far by about 3%. The 2.9% ADA paratransit shortfall is also due to a reduction of state ADA paratransit funding for 2017. In total, public funding is now $43.5 million, unfavorable to the original 2017 funding. Keep in mind that the state has also started deducting the 2% surcharge. It's about $1.7 million per month, or $5 million year to date, and it began with the May sales tax. Now let's look at expenditures. System-wide expenses through August were $38.7 million, or 2.1% favorable to budget, with CTA Metra and Pace Suburban Service continuing their strong expense performance. Pace ADA's unfavorable expense variance has lessened over the last couple of months, and in turn ADA's operating deficit variance has improved from 4.9% unfavorable at the end of the second quarter to 3.6% unfavorable now. This improving trend is consistent with the action plan that Pace staff submitted during the second quarter certification process. Looking at the regional level, the favorable operating expenses were not strong enough to offset the unfavorable operating revenue and public funding. So it's producing a net result which is $19.1 million unfavorable to budget. But this is an improvement of $1.5 million over last month's results. Pace ADA's unfavorable net result of $6.9 million, highlighted in red, but does not reflect the application of the $5.6 million in ADA paratransit reserve funding, which was approved by the board in August. The exact amount of the reserve for 2017 will not be determined until year-end, but it will not exceed the previously approved amount that this board authorized. Through August, let's look at recovery ratio. It is favorable to budget by 0.5 percentage points. This represents a growing margin due to the recent improvements in service board operating revenue performance. The fare revenue recovery ratio of 35.9% includes passenger fare revenue only, and it is 0.8 percentage points up from the second quarter. So that's considered the pure recovery ratio. When ancillary service board revenue is included, the recovery ratio increases to 41.4 for the year-to-date through August, also up 0.8 percentage points. In the right section, we show the year-to-date statutory recovery ratio, which is what we certify to the state, of 49.5. So it's approaching the 50% level that's required at year-end. Metro's recovery ratio continues to be significantly favorable to budget, while CTA has improved to be at budget, and Pace lags behind by 1.3%, again due to their operating revenue shortfall. So in summary, the good news is that ridership showed some signs of life in August. The service board revenue and expenses are both on an improving trend. As a result, the recovery ratio looks stronger relative to the 50% end-of-year requirement. This concludes my remarks, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. There's not a lot of good news in that document.
No, there
certainly
isn't.
the flat sales tax. We just, at our last board meeting, adjusted the sales tax for 2017, went with a 2.5% growth, I believe it was.
Yes.
And certainly this is showing us that we may have an additional problem with that. I did have the opportunity to attend a Metro Transit meeting in my county, and they talked about the steps that they were taking, and they're taking some very tough stance on reducing actual transit rides. They're cutting some of the service that is not used as much as what it should be. So they're taking some tough stands to try to get ready for what's coming our way. In addition to that, the service boards continue, I think, to do a good job at controlling their expenses, and yet even at that good job that they're doing, there's a $19 million problem that we're looking at this point. So anyway, I think we have a budgets coming up that hopefully the service boards are addressing and are going to be able to meet the challenge, because it's going to be a tough one. Are there other questions or comments about the report? Yes, Director Melvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question on the real estate transfer tax. What is your thinking about that going forward? I guess a lot of the buildings that are going up in downtown Chicago are really for lease, right? And there's actually a couple of instances of condos being converted into buildings that are now being leased. So is there an expectation that the real estate transfer tax will? Well, I guess I'm asking what your thoughts are, please.
So, as you know, the history of the real estate transfer tax has never brought in what was originally projected. That goes back many years. We work very closely with the City of Chicago Budget Office. We actually get their estimates from them. They're projecting a slight increase. Most recently, I think we got it end of August or something like that. So they're projecting a very conservative slight increase for 2018, and that's the number we will use. It is very volatile. I mean, all of a sudden you get a big bump from some big sale, but those are kind of sold already. The Willis Tower turned over and some of the other ones. The real estate transfer tax also includes things like condo sales and so forth. So even if some of those buildings turn over, if they turn into condos, that'll be a different. There was also discussion of looking at other ways to tax some of the leases. That goes a while back. So we base it on what the City of Chicago provides us and their best estimate.
Any other questions or comments? If not, thank you very much, B. The next item is 4.A, which is an ordinance authorizing innovation coordination enhancement ICE project amendment. This is a housekeeping item. Jill?
It is. It's a minor housekeeping item. I'm going to turn it over to Heather Mullins, who's the manager of program management and local planning, to brief you on it.
Thank you.
Good morning. Staff requests approval of the attached ordinance authorizing the executive director to provide a 12-month extension to the 2-year deadline for expending innovation coordination and enhancement, or ICE program funds, for a Metro ICE project to install electric outlets in rail cars. The ICE legislation allows the RTA to waive this deadline an unlimited number of times, provided that each 1-year extension is approved by an affirmative vote of 12 RTA board members. A little background on the project. It was originally approved by the RTA board in December of 2013. The contract was executed in May of 2014 and started that next month. The project consists of installing electrical outlets in Metro cars for riders to be able to charge their electrical devices. The current project status: the installation of the outlets is 72% complete. Pending work includes the installation of electric outlets in cars used on the Union Pacific lines and will be installed by Union Pacific staff. The delay in the project is due to limited availability of Union Pacific staff to perform the installations, but the project is scheduled to be completed within this 1-year extension period.
Thank you. The project, as you mentioned, is housekeeping. It does take 12 votes of the full board because of the extension as mentioned. So at the board level, we do have to make sure we have that resolved. Are there any comments, or if not, could we have a motion? A motion by Director Trani, second by Director Melvin. Roll call.
Director DeWitt? Yes. Director Cotel?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Melvin?
Yes.
Director Triani?
Yes.
Director McGallis?
Aye.
6 ayes, 2 absent.
Thank you. Item 4B is an ordinance authorizing short-term borrowing. B.
Yes, the ordinance you have before you requests authorization to issue a direct placement of working cash notes of up to $250 million within our $400 million short-term borrowing capacity. This is operating. This is to address the state delays in public transportation fund matches, because the state sales tax is never late. So this is strictly due to the state delays. It will be used to repay the existing direct placement working cash notes that are due. $250 million is outstanding in this placement, and they are due in November and January. So our plan would be to issue in November. It would be a competitively issued short-term borrowing. By doing a direct placement, we get an unused rate and a used rate, which has actually saved us considerable money, because the first year or so of the initial direct placement, we were able to benefit from the unused rate, and then as things got further delayed from the state, we not only had to do the first 150, but we added 100 million to it. So we would go out competitively in November, and based on terms and rates that we issue, it's sort of like a mini RFP, and then the various banks would bid on that. So again, were it not for the state delays, we would not be coming to you for $250 million. You'll hear later that the state owes us about $458 million. This, by the way, we currently also have another working cash notes outstanding for $150 million, which is due in April. So a total of $400 million that's within our capacity, and if we don't need to go out for all of it, if the state becomes more current, we will reduce that amount.
Thank you. The one question I guess I have is this is only permissible through June of 2018, and that's at a point when we have to have some legislative relief on the ability to continue that. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. What we have in place is the ability to go out until June 30th of 2018 for up to $400 million, which would be payable then in June of 2020. July 1st, we could only go out and borrow $100 million. So we could have $400 million outstanding until June 30th of 2020. We do have pending legislation that we've been told will be approved, so we are hoping to get that approved in the next few months.
So if it doesn't get approved, we have a couple of options. One is that certainly we have to make some substantial budget cuts if we don't get it approved. The other, it would be to try to get the state to pay their bills on time, which would be my preferred way of going. So, but we always rely on the state to pass that legislation.
So keep in mind too that the way this is structured, the debt holders, the bond trustee, there's a cash trap, so they would always get paid.
Oh, they get paid right off the top.
They get paid
It's our
right
service
off the
boards
top.
that don't get the distribution
Correct.
of revenue or money
Correct.
that they need. Yeah.
So we have to do this
Sure.
because either way they would get paid.
Absolutely. It's the operating budgets that would be affected. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Director Lewis.
So, B, last month we talked about the capacity issue. We're tapped out. I think, if I recall, it's $800 million plus this $400,000. Is that correct?
The $400 million is our short-term borrowing cap. The $800 million is our long-term capital bond cap. Right. And the $800 million right now, as you know, we came before the board and we requested, it was approved in December of 2016. The $150 million in capital bond issuance, which we hope to do sometime in first quarter, and we will come to the board again with the documents. But that is for capital projects. We also distributed, as part of our board briefing, the correspondence from the various service boards, CTA, Metro, and PACE, as to why this $150 million was important to them, what capital projects they hope to fund, and how they're already programmed.
Right. But the two elements of our financing are all that we have. There isn't anything else without getting some legislative relief or some other source of funding. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Were we going to send a letter to basically, I know at the last board meeting I thought we talked about formalizing this in the form of a letter saying that the RTA is in effect out of capacity from a debt perspective so that it goes on record. Were we able to do that at all?
The letter that was sent out related to requesting information on reduced and free fare programs, and also on this capital program. But as part of every budget process, Director McGallis has reiterated it. We do put it in the budget ordinance, and it will be in the budget ordinance again, that we will borrow up to our short-term borrowing capacity for delays in state funding, not for structural changes in funding, like the new 10% reduction, the 2% sales tax surcharge, the 10% on the PTF reduction. We will not borrow because those are structural changes and they have to address through their 2018 budgets. So it's in the budget ordinances and will continue to be.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Chairman.
Just a comment. You know, Springfield never ceases to amaze me. I mean, we're facing between slowdowns in sales taxes and their cuts, including another $1.5 million in cuts yesterday. You know, we're facing significant reductions that have an impact on, you know, the services that our service boards can provide. The 2% siphoning of the sales taxes, not only of the RTA, but all units of local government, to me is outrageous. I mean, it is the state's job to collect those taxes, and to take 2% of the metropolitan region's sales taxes for transit or our local communities and shift them to bureaucrats in Springfield is just, you know, it's outrageous at a time when the state is pushing more burdens on to local governments. But we're facing a significant problem. One of the things that I hope the state understands, and Jeremy and I were just with Congressman Adam Schiff the other day from Los Angeles, and we were talking about transportation funding, local transportation funding. Los Angeles just passed another referendum in favor overwhelmingly. In fact, I've said repeatedly that 70% of all referendums for transit services nationwide passed last November, but California and every other state in America is investing more and more and more into mass transit, while ours now, we face, you know, a nearly $100 million reduction. I don't think it takes much. I mean, if you look at the criteria for Amazon, mass transit was right at the top in their most important areas. And I always thought, you know, that a light bulb should go off. You know, we do what Amazon does. Amazon moves packages at the most efficient rate in the world, and they move packages, we move people. You know, and we repeatedly have had the lowest operating cost per mile of any major mass transit system in America, but we're just going backward here. And, you know, not only is the state reducing our funding, you know, they're not even paying us what, in fact, they should contribute so that our economy can grow. So this trend's got to come to a head soon. There are significant consequences. You don't face a $100 million reduction in funding for mass transit, most of it caused by the state of Illinois, without some repercussions, I guess. And as Director McGallis pointed out, you know, our service boards are making cuts. So, you know, they are doing everything they can. In fact, they're doing a very good job in holding down their costs. But this is now, you know, and at the Metro meeting, I don't think it's a secret that Chairman Carlson of Metro thinks that this is the worst financial crisis pending for mass transit in metropolitan Chicago's history that he's ever seen, and he's been around even longer than Ike and I have been around. So it's serious, but the 2% siphoning of local units of government money by the state for when it's their job, it's their Department of Revenue, that's what they're supposed to do, to me is just, it's unconscionable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anybody else? Any other questions or comments? If not, can we have a motion and a second to approve? Director Lewis moves, second by Director Melvin. Roll call.
Director DeWitt?
Yes.
Director Cotel?
Aye.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Melvin?
Yes.
Director Triani?
Aye.
Director McGallis?
Aye.
6 ayes and 2 absent.
Are there any other questions or comments or anything for the committee? If not, motion to adjourn by Director Tarani, second by Director Melvin. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Committee's adjourned. Thank you very much.